right. Okay, all right. Okay, hello everyone. I do apologize for the delay that we had today. Unfortunately, I had some technical issues and hence I wasn't able to start the session on time. So we are 3 minutes late, and it's an absolute pleasure to have Frances Hoggard with us today, who is an occupational therapist, and we're going to have a discussion about her occupation and important aspects involved in this. So Frankie, so again, thank you very much for joining us today. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
And if that's all right, I would like to start by asking you to tell us a bit about, you know, what's occupational therapy and who is an occupation therapist?
Yeah, so hi, thank you for having me. An occupational therapist is an allied health professional, and we offer support to individuals to engage with the activities that they need, they want, and they have to do. And our aim, hopefully, if it's their aim as well, is to maintain their own health and well-being. We hope to increase people's independence in their own lives, and this is usually after like an illness or an injury, and then any other barriers that they might be facing. What's kind of unique about OT is that we focus on the whole person and how they experience the world around them, rather than just focusing on a condition or a diagnosis. And that's more biopsychosocial model than a medical model. And in the UK, there's around 33,000 of us. I think there's a few more, and we're regulated by the Healthcare Professions Council. And then our professional body is the Royal College of Occupational Therapists.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So to become an occupation therapist then, you know, what kind of degree do you have to have?
So, our degree is a BSc. That's the one that I did anyway. And that's the undergrad version, although you can do it as an MSc now. I think that's over 2 years. And they've just, I don't know how widespread and how many opportunities there are at the moment, but they are bringing it as an apprenticeship as well. And the degree, however you do it, is a mixture of modules at university, and then also you have to do a minimum of 1,000 hours on placement. And these can be in lots of different settings across the whole time that you're a student. And as you progress through your course, you get slightly different things that you'd be expected to achieve and experience on those.
Okay, great, thank you. So when it comes to occupational therapy though, in what fields can you actually come across with this? So from the occupational therapy perspective, what are the differences between working in different areas?
Yeah, it's a really, really broad question for a really broad profession. I think the thing that unites us and the thing that makes us occupational therapists is our perspective, and we come from a standpoint of viewing people's occupations, and no matter where we work and what setting and what it looks like to other people around us, it's the philosophy that we're coming from that makes the profession the same. But for an example, if you're working maybe in a general hospital on an orthopedic setting, you might be helping assess someone get out of bed. Can they get on and off the loo? When they get home, are they still going to be able to do the things that are important to them in their day? So how are they going to prepare their meals and things? Whereas I work within mental health rehabilitation, and one of the things that we do is quite a lot of gardening, because that's really important to some of the people I work with. And through watching people garden and maybe planning for gardening group, there's so many life skills that we can see through that as well. So maybe budgeting, planning what we might want to get for the group, going out on to shop to find things in a shop for the gardening. And something as well that's been really nice the past few weeks is we've actually used some of the produce that we have grown, and we made a pea and ham soup last week with some of the peas that we'd grown. So yeah, that was lovely. And yeah, it's very different depending on which area you work in, but the occupational perspective should be the same.
Okay, all right, great. Well, thank you very much. And it's so interesting that you're actually having your own produce and producing something from it. That's great. Okay, so so in your occupation then, what I'm really wanting to know about is, do you interact with other health and social care professionals? And if so, which ones are these? And how does this benefit the patient overall? You know, how do you optimize that interaction so that your patients or the people that you're looking after can actually benefit from these?
Yes, definitely. Again, depends on which setting you're in as to who you might interact with. But I mean, in my day-to-day role, I work with many professionals. There's mental health nurses, and we have like the support workers, psychiatry, psychology. There's us as occupational therapists, and there's obviously people from, if someone was to go into the general hospital for a bit, we'd be liaising with members of their team as well. And we've also got a technical instructor who is to an occupational therapist what a nursing assistant would be to a nurse. So we're quite a broad team in that sense. And in terms of why you would have a multidisciplinary team like that and lots of different professionals, it's because we know the more professionals that you have, the wider your evidence base is for your interventions and the things that the care that you're providing for people. And there's, within healthcare, we use NICE guidance, which is the, I've forgotten how you call them, but the National Institute for, I think it's Clinical Excellence or Healthcare Excellence. And when we use those guidance, they, in many times, will recommend a multidisciplinary approach, and it's everybody coming from their own standpoints and their own evidence bases, and then together we are something much more, we can provide much safer and effective care for people.
That's great. That's great. So it looks like you have got a nice network of professionals working together. And how do you actually
definitely
modify that based on your patients? You know, how is it, do you, I guess the question that I'm trying to ask is, do you employ a sort of way of doing this on a patient by patient basis, or is it is it just one size fits all? How do you manage that? Do you always interact? Do you always have the same network, and no matter which patient you're dealing with, it's the same process, or can you customize that? And if so, how do you go about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think care should always be individualized, and we should always go by what that person might want and need, and obviously it should always be led by them as to who they want involved. But I think I think it depends a bit on the setup of the NHS as well, and maybe like where you are working. I know I've worked in a few mental health units, and it always has been the same set of kind of professions. But if anybody was to need maybe physiotherapy or social work, those professions would be involved as well. But then there's loads of different allied health professions like dietitians, speech and language, and if somebody was to need a referral, then they should be offered those kind of care professionals. As well with those occupational therapy, I suppose if you're working, for example, in a general hospital and maybe an acute medical ward, you maybe wouldn't have mental health nurses, you'd have general nurses, and you'd probably be more likely to be working with physios in your day-to-day job. So it depends on the setting, depends on the person that you're working with and caring for, but it should always be individualized.
Fantastic, thank you. So can you tell us a bit about, obviously we're live with scientists, so we want to know about the science behind everything. So can you tell us a bit about the science that underpins occupational therapy?
Yeah, so I feel a bit pressured. Occupational therapy in the UK, the Royal College of OT, there is a journal called the British Journal of Occupational Therapy, and we use qualitative research, quantitative, mixed methods, to add to our own evidence base. And it's actually part of our HCPC registration that we not only kind of read and keep up to date with what interventions are effective and safe, but also that we kind of engage with the research ourselves. So yeah, whenever there's new thing, we have like a magazine that comes with our registration, and whenever someone's done something new, they might publish it in there and we might read about it. And because we're quite a small profession and a relatively kind of new profession, and also people sometimes maybe don't know what an occupational therapist is, it's what we try and keep on top of research and engage with it ourselves, and that's how we kind of quantify if something's effective. But also I think something that really struck me, especially when I was studying, is a lot of research that I enjoyed reading was qualitative, and it was about that someone's experience of occupational therapy and an intervention that they might have taken part in. And I think within healthcare, you've got to listen to the people that you are looking after, because it's their life and their experience should always come first.
Great. So you mentioned about qualitative and quantitative research. So can you tell us how you use those methodologies to actually inform your, day-to-day actions?
Yeah, sure. I suppose something that if we use models of practice in occupational therapy, and the one I use, those can kind of vary between standardized assessments and non-standardized assessments, and we would only use something that we know is evidence-based and safe. So we'd maybe, if you were using a model of practice, the one we use in mental health, but there's many, but the one I work with is the model of human occupation. And if you were to be trying something new on a ward, so say even the gardening group before, you would read evidence of best practice. Where has gardening on a mental health unit worked before? What did people say it helped them with? Was it effective? That kind of thing. I'm sorry for not answering your question, but
that's fine. That's fine. So you're basically trying to get the information through your research to help a group of patients. That's the way I understand it. So can you tell us a bit about the things that you're actually sort of researching with those methods?
I feel really out of sorry.
That's fine. We can pass it there. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, that's fine. No worries at all. We can come back to it later on, and please do not feel pressured. It's just an informal chat. So, so I was also wondering, what would you say are the main benefits of occupational therapy?
Yes. So I'd hope that a benefit of it for people that use it, occupational therapy as a service, is that it helps them, enables them to do the things that are important to them. I know that might sound a bit wishy-washy, but that really is what we aim to do. And I think a wider kind of, so looking outside of the individual as well, I think there's evidence that if we can support people to keep themselves well through maybe prescribing them equipment, helping them to manage doing something on their own, then the long-term impact of that is people being able to build lives that don't rely on services, which obviously has a financial impact as well as the quality of life to that person. So obviously we're talking about research again, if people do want to read more about that, the Royal College of OT has a website separate to their own, and it's called Improving Lives, Saving Money, and there's loads of case examples on there of where someone might have done something in any particular setting. I think they've got articles on mental health, they've got them on prisons, children's services, and how one kind of intervention might help that one person but then I think the example I'm thinking of that I did read about was prescribing a gentleman to go to a football group, and this outdoor football group really helped this guy with planning a routine, with giving like structure to his day. It helped his mood, helped with just being part of a social circle as well. And because he felt better, that he required less visits from his mental health team at home. So then there's also that financial saving to, you know, there's less kind of intervention needed through somebody being able to do something that hopefully they will sustain after they've left a service as well.
That's quite good. So, you know, it sounds like there are a lot of support mechanisms for anyone who might be needing it as well. So, what do you think, or are there any common misconceptions about occupational therapy, do you think?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's a misconception, but I think sometimes people don't know who we are and what we do. I think I've been called a physio quite a few times, which no disrespect to physiotherapists, they're great as well, but we're a different profession. I think the biggest one that I came across, and this maybe, I don't know if someone else might feel this as well, but that we can either be a mental health occupational therapist or a physical health occupational therapist. And I think my perspective, but I think the profession as well really is that it isn't where we train as allied health professionals. We can work in physical health settings, we can work in mental health settings, we can work in the community, we can work in charities, and with that we have a holistic view of people. We don't see physical and mental health as different, we see them as the same, and recognizing that somebody is one person and treating and helping them, and not a condition or a diagnosis, like I said earlier.
Okay, great, thank you for that. So we know a little bit about you as well. So we know that you're most passionate about mental health. So can you tell us a bit about how can, you know, you said that we see it as an holistic individual, you know, you see it as a whole, you know, physical well-being and mental well-being. So can you tell us how occupational therapy can support mental health and mental health units?
Yeah, so I think I work on a rehabilitation unit, so the people who I work with will have been there a while, they might be there a while, and we help them with the day-to-day life. And then that sounds really broad, but the unit provides the structure for them, and then they tell us what is important to them, and that's what we work towards. So for example, someone's goal might be that they want to start cooking twice a week, and that is a really graded kind of approach to somebody maybe being able to cook for themselves every day. And it's about breaking things, taking what they do every day, what does somebody want to do every day, and how can we break that activity down into the little tasks to then build it back up again. And some of it is skills, some of it is building up people's confidence. Sometimes, because if I think we might think of cooking a meal, but for some people that I've worked with, the actual planning and putting the shopping list together is more than they might have done for cooking for themselves in a really long time. So to go from planning a shopping list to then, I mean, at the moment we don't, but to planning to catch the bus, looking at the bus timetable, remembering to take shopping bags, learning how to use maybe a self-service checkout. That might be something new that day to day we would just use, we wouldn't take it for granted maybe. To then being able to get in the kitchen, all the things that you might do in a kitchen, so using a cooker safely, having the fine motor skills to be able to chop food on the chopping board, and just breaking down those tasks of everyday life to help people do these things for themselves. And then in that, hopefully helping their mood by doing the things that are important to them and kind of giving them hopefully making them feel empowered as well.
That's great. So how do you measure the progress over time though?
Yeah, sure. So when I was talking about models of practice earlier, where I am particularly, we use, so it's called the model of human occupation, and the assessment that we do is called a MOHOST, which is a model of occupation screening tool. And there's different rankings on that, and it's not ranked that somebody's got better or worse at something, they're ranked with letters. And we would, over time, so we have a meeting once a month that is like a review meeting of somebody's care, and then there's a bigger meeting every 6 months for people, and we do the same assessment every month, and then at the big 6 month meeting, and we'd see and with our occupational therapy ones, it's really broken down. So did somebody remember where the pots and pans were in the kitchen? Did they remember to turn the oven on and off safely? Did they cook something? Because it might be that 6 months ago someone was cooking soup and bread, and it might be that you've just seen them cook like a roast dinner or something in a group of people. And so yes, we use assessments as outcome measures, but I think also we look at why somebody did something. So if someone comes to you and asks, can I cook in the kitchen, and makes a meal, but you know that that person maybe even 2 weeks ago didn't want to leave their bedroom, that we would take that as an outcome measure as well. And I know it isn't something that you could quantify even maybe by science. I know we're in a science talk, but seeing somebody's motivation maybe change and then want to do something, and then feeling a bit better and feeling motivated to do something, that is an outcome that we would take away as well.
Okay, that's great. So do you feel that occupational therapy has contributed to the improved awareness and discussion of mental health over recent years? And how do you think actually the field can further promote the reduction of stigma?
Again, that feels like a really big question.
We have time, don't worry.
I hope that, yeah, like occupational therapy has and will always continue to fight stigma against mental health. I think as we were talking about earlier, like our holistic philosophy of kind of somebody as they are and not this kind of split between physical and mental health. I think because we come from that standpoint, and we would use that in any kind of professional reasoning that we would always share, that we don't stigmatize mental health because we see it as part of the same person. And if something's impacting someone's day in one way, I think, so maybe I'm trying to think of an example to explain. So I suppose, like we were talking about orthopedics earlier, if someone had broken their leg or their ankle and they're at home, I think we would maybe consider as well, like I was talking about how someone might prepare food. And I think because we ask people what's important to them and what are the things that how they build up their daily lives, we might recognize that, yes, so somebody might have broken their toe or their leg, but then is that going to impact on all these other parts of their day? And then if it's impacting all those other things, like getting out of bed, going to the loo, being able to sit in the shower kind of thing, we would recognize that, yeah, that might impact somebody's mood as well. And from the start of viewing everything, in terms of what we could do further to fight stigma, I think for OT, because we are so new and because we are so small, maybe I think just keep doing what we are doing and remain committed to research, because the more that we can evidence that occupational therapy interventions work and that we can help people with mental health problems, well, not, I don't want to say problems, sorry, I didn't mean to say that, but like people who have a condition, then we've got a broader evidence base to support what we're doing, and hopefully people will understand that you can, yes, of course, medication can help if you have maybe depression or anxiety and things, but also how important and just how powerful it is to be able to do the things that you want to do in your daily life.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that detailed answer. So, in your opinion, though, what do you think the biggest challenges that you're facing every day are?
Ooh, I think time, in all honesty. I think I know this sounds really, really, maybe not even occupational therapy focused, but sometimes because of where I work and because what we know that the NHS isn't struggles for money, to put it politely, that it sometimes takes me quite a long time to log onto a computer, to get notes together, to get hold of somebody on the phone, to gather the things that I might need to do an assessment. And I think lack of time, I think lack of money as well. Like we have to budget our petty cash to support people to do their cooking sessions. Obviously, when I was talking earlier about somebody maybe planning to do a cooking session and writing the list and doing the shopping and things, we are at the OT department responsible for budgeting the money that we have. And I don't think you can't put a price on people's rehab, can you? If someone wants to do a cooking session or something, they should always be able to. But when you run a ward and resources are finite and you've got to share that equally between everyone and offer the same level of care to everybody, it is hard, and there's only so many hours in a working day, and I think we as healthcare professionals do have a responsibility to look after ourselves as well, so we need to make sure that we don't burn out and we fit things in our working day. But yeah, I think time, money, and maybe people maybe not knowing what occupational therapy is, which is all of our responsibility to share.
Great, thank you. So if you're not too tired, I've got 2 or 3 other questions that I would like to ask. But this time I would like to steer towards asking you questions with regards to your career, because we're well aware that we have got audience who is maybe at college age or at a stage where they're actually deciding on what they want to do in their future careers. So can you tell us a bit about why did you decide to pursue occupational therapy as a career?
Yeah, definitely. I'll be entirely honest, I considered nursing first. And yeah, I was working on a mental health unit and I was an activity coordinator. So I was managed by an occupational therapist, and my job very much consisted of running groups, and like I was talking before, cooking comes up a lot. And when I would go to meetings and things, this particular friend she really inspired me by, it was the professional reasoning of occupational therapy, and it was that it just made sense to me that people can look after themselves by doing the things that are important to them, and it seemed so human to want to do these things that seem so kind of like be supporting somebody to walk to the shop, or say somebody hadn't walked to the shop in a really long time, walking with them and then being to use walking to the shop as an occupation to feed back that this person can safely cross a road, or is aware of traffic, knows how to use pedestrian crossing. Are they able to concentrate? What's their orientation like? Do they remember their directions? I just think being able to assess people and learn about them through them doing daily life activities, so much, it's just not intrusive. You're letting people carry on do those things, but at the same time you're learning so much about them, and they're kind of sharing their world with you in a way.
Okay, it sounds like a very rewarding occupation anyway.
Definitely,
So do you think that so obviously you do think that it's a rewarding career. So have you experienced a situation that made you realize how important and significant your work is?
Oh yeah, that's a really big question as well, is it? So one standout thing. Let me think. To be honest, I had a conversation with somebody today, and they, this particular person really, they really struggled to kind of eye contact and holding a conversation. I wouldn't really be able to talk to them for more than a few seconds at a time. And we were cooking a pizza. Back to food. My day isn't all food, but there's a lot of it. And while we were waiting for this pizza, they told me that they love going on walking group, that it really helps them manage their emotions. I learned about things that they did at the weekend while I wasn't there. I learned things about this person that were just, because we were focused on doing the cooking, really, it created a kind of environment where we were able to start a conversation because it was safe and it was something that was important to them. And this person I've known now for 6 weeks, and I think only today, through doing that, cooking that pizza that was so important to them, I just learned so much more about them, and I think my therapeutic relationship with them was just so much stronger from that, I came away from it thinking, like that, I get it. I think I get OT now. I think, but I don't mean to sound biased, but when you do have moments like that in a week, or sometimes a few times a day, where something happens and you think, oh yeah, like this is a really cool job, and
Nice. So could you tell us then, how do you train? You did touch to this earlier in our discussion, but can you tell us a bit more about how do you train to become an occupational therapist?
Yes, so do you mean kind of from sixth form to university, or do you mean the actual kind of course?
If you can touch both, that would be quite useful, actually.
Yeah, sure. So I'd actually done a different thing before, and my path so I did a BSc, and I got onto that through doing an NVQ in health and social care. I'm not sure what A levels or kind of BTEC or what you would have to take at the moment, but I know if you do go on the RCOT website, Royal College of OT, there is a whole section on what kind of qualities, what kind of subjects, what kind of background. I think some of when I applied, because I'd worked as an assistant, a healthcare assistant and things, that was kind of my route in, and having, I think definitely I know it's really hard, and I know at the moment I don't know how conceivable it would be, but work experience, like shadowing somebody, but maybe even at the moment send an OT an email, or try and speak to someone on the phone for 5 minutes and just ask them about their day and what they do, because I think this coronavirus and things, I don't know how conceivable it would be to actually shadow someone at work, but just try and speak. I'd hope we're a friendly profession, and I'd always welcome if anyone is interested. But yeah, and then throughout so I did a 3-year degree, and I did just over 1,000 hours of placement, which was split over the 3 years. And in my first year, we had a placement that was mostly observational, and my one was in vascular rehabilitation. And then in my second year, I had 2 more placements one was in a community mental health team, and the second one was in an A&E department. And then in my third year, my university do placements where there isn't an occupational therapist, so you'll go in somewhere and consider what an occupational therapist could do if they were there, and kind of put together a bit of a business case for why there should be one. And then our final placement is something to, if we've maybe missed out on a particular area of healthcare, or there's something that we're really passionate about, we would go for there. And then throughout my degree, every year we did a research module, and the other modules were kind of just building on the theory and knowledge. Oh, sorry, my headphones are...
So if there are any sort of students who are actually interested in this, so what would you tell them, you know, what kind of personalities, personal qualities they should have to be good at this profession?
Yeah, sure. I think definitely empathy and compassion would be my 2 biggest things. I think if you are genuinely motivated to listen to people describe their experience of things and try and learn from them how that might be, and then use our kind of occupational therapy problem solving skills to support people, that really is empathy and compassion, I'd say, and problem solving. We've got to be really creative sometimes. You never know what the way around something might be, but and definitely if you are genuinely looking at occupational therapy, in the NHS there is something called the 6 C's of care, and compassion comes under there, care comes under there, competence, courage, and you can read a bit more about them there. But definitely, again, I know I keep saying that the Royal College of OT website is really, really informative for what kind of things, what kind of qualities you'd look for in somebody, and the Healthcare Professions Council as well have a section on their website.
Great, thank you. So I have made you to talk for 40 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I think it's time to give you a break and give our audience a chance to come up with questions. I'm sure they will have some interesting ones. And then we will resume in 10 minutes. So we will be back 7:22 and carry on with the questions and answers. Yeah?
Thank you.
Lovely, great. Thanks very much. Hello. Hi, Frankie. Thanks for coming back just on time. Great. So I actually would like to start. So we have got some nice questions from our audience as well. But before moving on to those, I would like to start with some of the questions that I have, if that's all right with you. So can you tell us a bit about, obviously we're dealing with COVID-19 at the moment. So was there any impact of COVID-19 on occupational therapies? And if so, could you sort of describe us what these were?
I was a student, a final year student, when the COVID-19 came, well, when we started to talk about it in the UK. And from my experience so I was on placement on a mental health unit, and it very quickly impacted most things of my day-to-day work with other people. So as a final year student, you would hope that you can demonstrate holding a small caseload, doing things under supervision by your educator, but that you are almost ready to work as a qualified occupational therapist. And very quickly that kind of changed, and when the lockdown happened, we struggled with leave, so taking people, whereas before we would have gone shopping, gone to the supermarket, got the tram, all of those things were gone really quickly, and everything became very ward based. And so assessments where I might have been learning about assessing somebody, doing all of the community bits as well, that kitchen assessment very quickly became heating microwave food and things that someone might have already had in the freezer. And that was just that very initial first week when we were still finding out what was going on. I remember the first day that PPE just appeared and we were told, this is it, this is what you need to wear. And I've stayed in mental health since then and gone on to a different unit, and obviously the restrictions have lifted somewhat and things are really different. But what really struck me in my third week of where I work was a gentleman said to me, oh, I've really enjoyed starting to work with you, but I don't actually know what you look like. And that was just a reminder to me that, yes, I'd got used to wearing the gloves and the mask and the apron, but actually some people didn't know. I think you say so much with your face, don't you? And they didn't even know. You think that when you smile, even when you've got your mask on, I think you think that people can see that and they can't. And that was a real reminder to me that there was this physical barrier in between me and the people I was trying to form therapeutic relationships with, and how much that must have affected it. But to answer the question more widely, I think it's so broad that I almost wouldn't like to comment on the experience of other occupational therapists in other areas. But I do know from reading our magazine and from talking to colleagues and friends that people's jobs have changed really quickly. Their responsibilities of their job have changed really quickly. People might have moved from general hospitals to Nightingale hospitals. People might have changed their working hours. They might have worked shifts. It's just, and I think the big thing at the moment, and I think it's maybe a hashtag on Twitter, but I can't remember what it might be. But I think as health professionals and allied health professionals and more broadly, we're thinking about the rehab as well and what that is going to look like. So we've had COVID-19 happen, and we're here at the moment, but long term, what kind of things are we looking for to help people get back to normal after they've lived through that? So yeah, that's a really broad question. I don't really have much of the answer to it apart from my own experience. But
okay, great. So I would like to start with the audience questions. So we have got somebody from the audience who's thinking about becoming an occupational therapist. And apparently this person has worked as a community arts and music worker in the past.
Yeah.
And they had some long-term mental health issues as well. So they're just asking your advice on whether or not do you think it's a better idea for them considering sort of career in occupational therapy, and also they think their age might be a sort of factor that's restricting them to achieve their aim. So what do you think are the, you know, if is occupational therapy an occupation where if you're older you would be disadvantaged? Can you give us a bit more insight into this side of things?
Yeah, of course. I'm biased, but I think if you get the opportunity to train, yeah, take it. Sounds like you, with your job and lived experience, it sounds like it would be a fantastic step for you. I think, so there's two things I was thinking really. So one of them is to do with, like you were saying, looking after ourselves and being well and looking after our own kind of, we call it fitness to practice. It's actually part of our code of conduct and part of our, to keep our registration, sorry, it's how we're regulated. And when you go through your training, you'll have a personal tutor and you'll form a relationship with them and you'll meet them at various points across your degree. And so much of being an occupational therapist and other allied health professions is being a reflective practitioner, and it's reflecting on things that have happened and things that you've learned and kind of engaging with that as a learning process, but also on keeping yourself well. Like, are you well, and are you okay to be, because we work, anybody in so many, especially at the moment, not just occupational therapy, like anybody in healthcare, health and social care. And I think all of us at the moment, with what we're all going through, we are very acutely aware of our own health and well-being, and we all know ourselves best, and you will be encouraged to check in with yourself, check in with your own ways of looking after yourself, and kind of, we used SWOT analysis as well sometimes. And I know for myself as a student, something that really affected my mental health if I was ever feeling low would definitely be money. And I worked as a healthcare assistant while I was studying, so working extra hours and then also going and doing my degree. And I think you are supported to get through the training in the way that is the safest for you. And I've had friends who've had babies as they've been training, so taking time out, people who might have stopped for a bit and then come back. And it's we are a caring profession, and I'd hope that that's anyone's experience of their training wherever they'd want to do that.
Great, thank you. I hope that's helpful. If you want to follow up on your question and on this answer, please feel free to write an additional question to our comment section. So to follow on from this then, can you tell us, is it actually difficult to get an occupational therapy job? And do you often get very many vacancies in this field?
Sure. A check. So my position now, I got found through NHS jobs, and I think it really depends. I wouldn't like to speculate really, but since my friends and I finished this year, and that was obviously quite staggered because people's placements were disrupted by COVID-19 and finishing them off, I think people that have wanted to start work straight away have found jobs. And generally, if you look through, is it the National Student Surveys and things, and you'll find kind of employment statistics, I think occupational therapy does fare really well. And I think what was really helpful was one of my last modules at university was going through our CVs and experience and going through job descriptions of newly qualified occupational therapy posts and learning how to kind of match up what we'd done to what that kind of expectation would be as a newly qualified member of staff. And also recognizing that you don't know what you don't know. And I know that sounds really kind of basic and kind of blunt, but knowing when to ask somebody more senior than you. So being able to know what your scope is, know where the learning's going to happen, and then know when to ask someone with more experience as well.
Lovely, great, thank you. So what advice though would you give to a first year occupational therapy student?
Oh, second year is harder.
All right.
No. I think keep going, definitely. I think my first year, I loved it and I was really excited to obviously realise I had a lot to learn still. And then second year I thought, oh gosh, like this, because it's a lot. I definitely now, as a newly qualified member of staff, I'm feeling the responsibility as being a qualified health professional. And in second year, I think you get the chance to experience that more. And then third year, the reins start to come off a little bit as you're that close to finishing. But if for first year, enjoy it, keep going, and you're a third of the way through. Don't worry about it, you'll be grand.
Okay, great. So are there very many universities though who offer occupational therapy degrees?
I think so. I studied at Salford, and when I applied, I think I applied to Liverpool as well, and
Okay.
There's some more in the north, and there's definitely some universities further south as well. I think there's not as many places as other professions, but there is enough to choose from.
Okay, great, thank you. So one of the other things that one of our audience is asking is, are there any technological tools? I'm assuming they're asking about artificial intelligence or something similar, which help occupational therapy professionals in their day-to-day work?
Yeah, that's a really cool question. In mental health, I have never, so using video calling for meetings is about the coolest technology that I've come into using. However, when there's a show every year called the OT Show originally that I've attended, and there's quite a few talks there about technology and how that can really impact people's lives. And I think the thing, maybe even this past 12 months, that's really come to my mind is how our phones as well. I know we've all got one, and the more that they learn to do that, there's so much scope for technology and assistive technology. But if your phone in your hand can maybe translate things, or it can dictate things, or you can turn the lights on and off, you can control your kitchen appliances, you can open the curtains, ring people, you can have watches that also act as false alarms. I think I haven't worked in an area that's used a lot of assistive technology apart from bed sensors maybe, but yeah, the scope is huge. Please tell me if you learn about something really cool, because I'm really interested in it as well.
Great, thanks very much. So lastly though, considering for example people like the audience who has asked the question and highlighted the fact that they were a little older, so most likely scenario is this person has already completed a degree.
Yeah.
So if this is the case, do you think anyone who wants to do a occupational therapy degree would be able to get a loan on top of that?
I know you can, because that's what I did.
Okay.
So yeah, right. Just to go back to the person who asked earlier about doing something later in life, my cohort at university was a real mix of ages, and people who I've met not at university but through work as well. Occupational therapy seems to my experience of it, so it might not be everybody's, but it seems to be a profession that people don't know about until they need it, or they come across it in a different context. And then when people learn about it, if the opportunity presents itself and they retrain, they'll take that on. And my friends from my course and my colleagues are a real mix of ages, and yet with the, I would check with student finance, that's who I went through, but as of 2017, when they stopped the NHS bursary, you can get a second loan for a healthcare profession. However, I'd check because it might have changed again. Although, yeah, definitely check on student finance, because it was the reason that I was able to retrain. So I can't imagine it would have stopped 3 years later, but I don't know. But yeah, check student finance.
Okay, great, lovely. Well, thank you very much, Frankie. I think we made you to really work hard this evening. So we're just going to give you a break. Thanks very much for the information that you have provided. It was very enlightening and very interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm sure our audience did as well. And I would like to thank you on behalf of our audience and close the session.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for letting me join you.
No problem at all. It was an